Hello and welcome to the Sunday stream edition of Adam's Newsbox. Now, I'm doing it a lot earlier than I'd like because yesterday I tried to do a stream. It didn't work. I don't know why, but I do appear to be here with you now. So, all other technical disasters aside, here we go. And it's going to be a sad stream anyway because the world just bid farewell, hopefully temporarily, but you never know with these things. The world bid farewell to the biggest operable pipe organ in the world, one of the biggest of all time. And this is, of course, the famous Wannamaker organ in Philadelphia. Now, this organ opened up in 1911, and it took about 2 years to build. And the original configuration of the organ, it had 10,000 pipes. But this was deemed insufficient by Mr. Wannamaker himself. And so he opened up his own sort of organ shop with organ repairmen and organ makers and, the whole nine yards. And he expanded the organ right up until he said, right, now this organ can fill up this huge hole, this absolutely wonderful space. Now, the space was his department store. Wanamaker's was a department store, one of the biggest in the world, and the Philadelphia location where the organ was his flagship location. Now, this instrument delighted shoppers for over a century, but it had its ups and downs. In the 90s, it was generally at its biggest down because less than half of the organ was actually operable. But it was around this time that the department store building was purchased by Macy's, and Macy's did a wonderful job restoring the organ to 100% of its functionality. But unfortunately, the story doesn't end there because Macy's in Philadelphia closed down yesterday. The store is no more, and because of that, the organ is now behind a locked door. Now, the building itself is owned by a New York-based company called TF Cornerstone. And they claim, as developers often do, that they're going to keep the organ and allow the public to continue going to organ concerts. We can only hope that that's true, but a lot of times things in that industry just don't work out the way they're supposed to do. Now, the whole thing is, to me, a really, really sad tale for many, many reasons. Now, why is Macy's closing? Well, we can believe what Macy's is saying in that they're looking to, streamline their business. People are less interested in large department stores, so they're going to focus on some of the specialty outlets and they're downsizing. And because they have quite a considerable property portfolio, they're looking to sell a lot of what they've got in order to, get some extra revenue and all that, all that sounds fine. But I think that there are definitely other issues at play. And have we just had another technical failure? No, I think we are alive, which hopefully the organ will be too. Now, here's the problem. Is it true that department stores are declining? Well, yes. And in many ways, they've been gradually declining, and because of that, changing for over a century. At the time when Mr. Wanamaker was alive, department stores were like Disneyland. They were events. They were usually in central locations in downtown areas, and they were larger than life. They really wanted to make going there an experience. They were beautiful. When you look at the late 19th and early 20th century department stores, they were architectural landmarks, most of them. And you could really do everything in them. You could buy clothes, furniture, some of them sold houses. They all had bars and restaurants for the most part. They sold all sorts of books and later on radios and stereo equipment. And as the shopping mall became a thing in the middle of the 20th century, a lot of these centrally located downtown stores either downsized or closed entirely. And the shopping mall experience was sort of one where the department stores were the anchor, but not necessarily the full attraction. And this necessarily made them smaller in many instances than their former sort of glorious downtown locations. And then you see the advent of the big box store, the Walmarts and the Costcos, which have almost everything in it that most department stores do. They don't really compete with the luxury ones, but they do compete with some of the more mid market and down market ones. And so that was a thing too. And we all know what the internet is. Some of you are watching me on it right now, assuming this thing is on and still working. And so the history of the department store's decline has in fact been a relatively a long one, but I think that there's something else at play that no one wants to talk about. Not Macy's, not the city of Philadelphia, not anyone. But I'm going to talk about it here because it needs to be said, and that is crime. Crime is out of control, not just in Philadelphia, but in almost every major American city, every major Canadian city, most major European cities. Crime is out of control. And there is a very good reason for it. It's politicians. Politicians, along with elements of the real estate speculation industry, want there to be crime. They want the old sort of grand downtowns, the city centers, all of that stuff. They want it to empty out of people. They want to price them out, and if they can't price them out, they want to scare them out. Now, why would they want to do this? It seems counterintuitive. And for some businesses where it is counterintuitive, they don't actually want to, but enough of them do. Because you see, property these days isn't owned in much of the time by people who actually make their living in the traditional way that you would think of in the real estate business. In other words, someone owns the building, they lease out the spaces, they want the businesses in those spaces to be commercially viable and make a profit so that the lease is fulfilled, and that they want it to be so profitable that if the lease needs to increase, that the business owner can afford it. Not so much anymore, because now a lot of these property owning companies are asset managers for whom real estate is just one of many assets. They've got stocks, they've got oil, they've got gold, they've got arms, they've got everything else. Because of that, property isn't seen as something that needs to function on the basis of fundamentals. And what are the fundamentals? The fundamentals are the situation that I just outlined to you. You want a building, a commercial building, to have stores with leases, and they want those stores to be successful. That's not the model with these asset managers. For these asset managers, the model is more like a savings account. It's more like holding something like gold, an asset that gains its value increasingly slowly over the years because of inflationary policies that are a necessary evil in fiat money, which itself is not even necessary. I prefer gold-backed money, but anyway, they see it as a long-term growth asset, and so for them, they don't particularly care if anyone is renting out or leasing out the spaces. For them, it's just something to hold. You know, the hold memes that we all see. For them, the property is something that they hold. And they will hold it until the natural inflationary cycles makes it a lot more valuable over a 5 or 10 or even 15-year period. And this isn't the first time that we saw that. We saw it in New York in the 70s and 80s. We saw it in downtown LA in the sort of 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, where you see people that are holding on to property simply as a long-term asset, and they don't really care about the day-to-day rents and leases. And this is why the rents and leases have got so expensive, even as things like offices are becoming obsolete in some cases because of remote working, and even as people are, as Macy's correctly says, they're going to smaller stores, they're doing more online shopping. So you would think that that would mean the rents and leases would be going down, the laws of supply and demand. That would be the case if these people, like I said, were in real estate for reasons of the fundamentals. They're not. Because if they see these things as an asset, they would see renting these out at a genuine market value or even a bit below to sort of kickstart things. They would see that as a waste of their time because of the insurance costs and because of having to deal with people, which means extra lawyers or the existing lawyers with more billable hours. So they would prefer these places to stand empty. And how do they accomplish that? Well, they put up rents and leases that are exorbitantly high, thinking, right, no one is going to be so stupid as to pay these leases, which means we'll have our building just empty, which is fine because we're sitting on it like you would sit on a T-bill, or that you would sit on a savings account, or that you would sit on gold waiting for it to appreciate. But if someone is stupid enough to pay these rates, only then would it be worth our while. And so you have the perfect storm of landowners, of property owners who don't necessarily want their businesses, their spaces in their shopping centers or their office buildings or what have you. They don't really care if they're rented or leased out. And because of that, they price out the average store owner. And to, speed up the process, store owners that have had leases that are up for renewal, they make the renewal rate absolutely impossible. What does this mean? It means that city centers, downtowns are emptying out of stores and they are emptying out of people. But if that's not enough to get people away, the politicians, who are the same group of people as the property owners, they want crime and they want lots of it, because some people might be willing to stick around in spite of the prices going up a lot, and for them there are the criminals. So why do they want this, you say? Well, because it completes the process, it expedites it in the short term, which helps them to complete it. And these are empty downtowns where the property is just acting like an asset. No need for public services, no need to actually have small business owners do well. You're just using cities the way that, let's say, a family would use a savings account, saving up, accruing interest, waiting for a rainy day. Well, here they're accruing value because inflationary cycles in a fiat money system traditionally mean that property value almost always goes up in spite of the state of the property. Because again, when the inflation kicks in, all other considerations tend to be minuscule compared to the problem that you naturally have from that inflation. And that's one of the reasons Macy's couldn't make it. Macy's is a company that actually does something useful. They sell clothes to people. Everyone needs clothes. Well, some don't, but most do. But the owners of these downtown properties are increasingly seeing them as something very different than people saw property a generation ago. Now, what's the solution to all of this? And again, I know this is technically supposed to be a music stream, but I'm trying to explain to you why so many live music experiences, whether the beautiful Wannamaker organ or whether the small little cafe down the road, the little coffee shop that had a jazz band in the corner, why are all of these places closing? Why is the live music experience being taken away from us? And the reason is these asset management firms. Now, you can blame them if you want. They're not necessarily the nicest people. Some are probably okay. It all comes down to, though, a fundamental issue, which is the fact that the money that is being used is fake. The dollar is fake. The euro is fake. It's all fake. It's all fake. And the reason it's fake is because it's not based on anything. It's a piece of paper. That's all it is. Didn't used to be. When you have what's known as the classical gold standard, that piece of paper is a promissory note that can be traded in for a hard asset, an asset with a universally established and acknowledged value. Traditionally, this was gold. You could have a silver standard, you could have a bimetallic standard. There's some problems with that, but the point is, gold is a real thing with real value. Silver is a real thing with real value. You could always make it something else. You could say, okay, I'm going to back a dollar bill with a barrel of oil, but obviously a bit of gold is easier to lug around than a barrel of oil. You see what I'm getting at? And so, if we went back to the gold standard, these wild inflationary spirals of the dollar depreciating over time against hard assets like gold or like property, if we were to get to that stage, property would, in large amounts, in a big way, it would cease being this kind of long-term speculative asset, and it would return to being something that it used to be, a functional asset, an asset in which people can live, and in the commercial sense where people can do commerce. And so you wouldn't see these empty downtowns. You wouldn't have an incentive for the asset management class to work with the corrupt political class to unleash crime everywhere. It really all goes back to gold. So many of society's ills could be cured if we just went back to gold. There would be more scrutiny of politicians doing crazy things because there wouldn't be powerful financial interests to back them. Anytime you see a crazy politician, and believe me, there are plenty of crazy ones. They're in Philadelphia, they're in LA, they're in San Francisco, they're in Paris, London, Berlin. They are everywhere. Not so much in China. They have intelligent politicians. But in the Western countries, they're generally stupid, especially at the local level. And the reason for that is that the asset managers who own the world actually want them to be stupid, because what looks stupid based on its irrationality from the point of view of an average citizen is smart for the asset managers. These horrible crime waves, bad for the small business owner, bad even for relatively big companies like Macy's, bad for the average citizen, bad for children, bad for animals, bad for everyone, good for property speculators who want to get in and then watch the prices increase. Even if there was a minor and temporary, a transitory property price crash, all the better. They just invest more. More of their friends would buy into it, and then you would sit and wait for it to appreciate. Um, and to keep anyone else from questioning it, you just unleash the criminals. No one actually believes that crime is a good thing. The politicians claim that they do. Oh, crime is a human right. It's your right to be a total menace to society. No one actually believes that. Well, some people do. Some people are stupid and crazy enough to believe that. But most people, at least in important positions, who say that, they know what they're doing. They're making life friendly for the big asset management companies that do not care about you. They don't even care about relatively big companies like Macy's, because to a BlackRock, Macy's is it's nothing. It's their equivalent of you having a case of Coca-Cola that you bought from Walmart for, $8. I'm exaggerating a bit, but only a bit. So, when did this stop being a music stream? About 15 minutes ago. But back to the music. So, these are all of the reasons why music is being stolen from us. And don't get me wrong, I love recorded music. I talk about it a lot. I love streaming, but nothing can compare to the live musical experience. It's ethereal, it's spiritual, it's physical, it's anatomical, because we're experiencing it through our ears, and we're experiencing the vibrations, particularly for an instrument like the great Wannamaker organ. We're experiencing that through all the various synapses of our bodies. And they want to take that away from us. And the people that I've been talking about for the last 50 minutes are the people that are attempting to take that away from you and me. Now, the Wannamaker organ did get its send off in style, because an organization, I think it's called the Friends of the Wannamaker organ or something like that. I'm going to look it up for you now. Do, 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 do. And they're good. They're well worth, yeah, the Friends of Wannamaker Organ, they're definitely people that I would encourage you to donate to. These are the people who have worked with Macy's, which was a very good steward. They had only good things to say about Macy's. So that's why, again, I'm sad it's closing down in Philadelphia. They work with the company to preserve and maintain the organ, because maintaining an organ that big and that old, it takes an army of really specialized people to maintain it. And this society has provided volunteers to do just that. And they've done an absolutely stellar job. over the years. But now it's a bit of a mystery. Like I said, the property owner says the organ will remain. Will these people be allowed in on a regular basis to maintain it? If not, it's going to cost a lot to restore, because if these kinds of organs aren't relatively maintained, they can decay. Like with other famous organs, if you don't use it, you might just lose it. So this concert that they organized yesterday, this grand send off for the organ, was absolutely beautiful. All of the organists who are the in-house organists playing this instrument to the delight of shoppers on a regular basis, they all came to play. The head organist is a wonderful musician named Peter Richard Conti, absolutely wonderful. And the other associate organists that played, I'm just going to read all of their names. They deserve it because they were all wonderful. There was Aaron Patterson, there was Mark Banai, there was Jeremy Flood, there was Luke Satisianos. I apologize, Luke, but you were great. I watched you. There was Monty Maxwell, there was Rudy Lucente, and there was Dylan David Shaw, all of whom were great. And I encourage you to watch all the videos. I'll put a link in the description when I'm done with this, so that you out there in YouTube land can see what I mean and mean what I say. But I encourage you to watch it. Most of the sets are about half an hour, where Mr. Conti, as the head organist, he played the final gala, and that was around an hour and a half, every minute worthwhile. And he did say, Mr. Conti did say at the end that he's optimistic about the organ's future. I hope that I can share that optimism. I've just seen so many of these kinds of promises made and broken. I've seen, oh, we're tearing down this old historic building to make it something better, but it remains a hole in the ground. Because if the hole in the ground is going to be more worthwhile in 5 years, why waste the money building anything? It's not going to add that much value. That's what these people think. This is their business model. And can you fault them? Well, sure, what they're doing is unethical. It's not illegal. And it is something created by a system where money is created out of thin air, which makes things like property into things that you can play with rather than live in. And yes, there's always been and always will be property speculation, but the reason it has reached these insane levels, where you now have politicians intentionally putting criminals and letting them run wild in the cities to empty them out, so that these people can have more places to run around on the monopoly chessboard. And the one place that the politicians never go is jail. That's where they belong. And that's why, if you had a gold standard back, it would be good for every industry, including the creative arts industries, because it would allow people to open up their public spaces for music. And this would actually be helped by the internet, because it is true that we need fewer or smaller or more specialized clothing stores. You order a television monitor, you order a kitchen appliance online. So what does that leave for the physical spaces that people are yearning for? Well, live music is one of them. The things that you cannot replace, the things that you cannot order online. You can order a shirt online, you can order a Lululemon thingy online, you can order a lemon itself online, a lemon without the Lulu. But if you want to see Lulu sing, see, I brought it back together, folks. If you want to see her sing live, you're going to need a public space in which the live performance can occur. And if you went back to the gold standard, you would see people functioning much more logically. You would see a return to business based on the fundamentals. And that's what we would have had if we maintained the gold standard. There's corruption in every system, but nothing like this. And it's never been done before. Every society that actually has a real economy that sustains itself, from the Roman and Byzantine empires to Alexander's empire, to the Spanish Empire, all of the great empires of the world, they had silver or gold. It's in a Christmas song, no less. Silver and gold. Everyone loves silver and gold. Yeah, they didn't, when the baby Jesus was born, they didn't bring him a fake fiat dollar, now did they? I mean, even the frankincense is frankly a more solid commodity than a piece of paper. That's why they're taking your live music away. That is the reason. Um, let's hope that more people will begin to realize that. As Don McLean said, perhaps they never will. Anyway, that's my stream today. It's a bit more of a rant, but I think it's a necessary one because there are a lot of people trying to take our music away. And I think music is definitely worth fighting for peacefully. Of course, we have to say that because of the what's the word I'm looking for? The low impulse control people out there, or at least the ones that the owners of this platform imagines that you are. I, for one, have a lot more respect for you than Google does. Maybe that's why I couldn't live stream yesterday. Anyway, as always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. And I'll put the link to the Friends of the Wannamaker Organ Society this in this in the description. Just should be obvious. I speak for myself. I don't speak for them. I have nothing to do with them other than I like what they do. I don't speak for Macy's. These are my points of view, and I'm sure that they will disagree with all of them in public. They'll agree in private. See you soon. Take care.